People are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. The hiring process can be slow and overwhelming. Simplify hiring with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform. With over 350 million global monthly visitors according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. That's Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Terms and conditions apply.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. I'm out here in the West Coast. Ross is back home for some funness, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but really excited for Ross and some of the things that he's about to do on game day. But, man, how you doing with this Swifty craziness that's going on in the city? I got to get out of it. So
it's some of the most, like, wholesome partying I've seen in the city of New Orleans. It's just very different. People are handing out friendship bracelets. They're doing karaoke on the street. It's actually, honestly, genuinely, it's been fun. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's good for the city. I'll say that.
Yeah,
I mean, it really is. So when I saw the lines out at Cafe Du Monde and the merch stuff and all that, Cafe Du Monde is not where you want to go if you're trying to get some stuff. Like, I love Cafe Du Monde, but that's the tourist spot. But anyways, I digress. And then it was cool because I was flying into LA last night, and of course the Dodgers are playing. And so when Freddie Freeman hit that grand slam, which we got to see when we got to see the Angels grand slam. That was cool to see. I got chills just thinking about it. But I got to see all the fireworks going off from different people's houses flying into LA.
Cool.
So it was it was a really cool experience. But I don't know. It is just fun. But man, obviously you guys aren't here to talk about and reminisce Taylor Swift and Dodgers baseball, but it's a cool thing that's going on. But here we are, Ross. This Saints team is 2-5. They had a mini bye. They had a chance to kind of reset a little bit. This week in the locker room, I got the sense that, vibes are good, and like I'm saying is everybody feels like it was kind of jovial, if you will, all these things that are going on. But the bottom line is, you kind of hinted at it on Thursday night as a must win. We're at another point now where it's week 8. They're 2-5. They have to win this game because they have to start putting wins back into the column. The biggest question on everybody's mind, can they do it?
Yeah, it's going to be the biggest thing here, and they're going to need a lot of help, but they're getting some help back. Health is trending in the right direction for this team. As I've said throughout the week, a bunch in my conversations and radio calls and shows and stuff like that, is that health alone isn't going to win a game for them. They're going to have to, fix up some of the things execution-wise, particularly over in the defense, run defense, all those other things. But it's a team that's getting much healthier, should have a lot more weapons and protection around rookie quarterback Spencer Rattler, who will get his 3rd start in this game.
Yeah, I think that of all the returns, obviously there's a lot of them. So Chris Olave is returning from his concussion. He's cleared the protocol. You should get Lucas Patrick back in the mix. Cesar Ruiz coming back from that knee injury, which his injury was really crazy the
Weird.
way he was
Yeah.
describing it, just saying it,
Yeah.
he just couldn't even walk and he had some fluid drain from his knee and all that stuff. And then, Pete Warner's in the track to play. He's been out of action, obviously. And so, and then Taysom Hill with the rib injury. I
Yep.
mean, this is a good sign. I mean, this is probably the best injury report they've had all year. You know what I mean? And Derek Carr's doubtful. They don't have Cedric Wilson Jr. this week. No Nick Saldiveri. But man, it's tough to say because when you look at it, I don't know who I'd say is maybe the biggest return here. But I feel like for me, the offensive line being more intact is probably the best thing for me, especially with Spencer Rattler making his third start.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that, honestly. I think it's the offensive line and Taysom Hill. Anything that contributes to the run game, right? Because that's what predicates the rest of the offense. Obviously, being able to have Chris Olave in the lineup so that Spencer Rattler can actually throw to his top wide receiver in this situation, having only played 2 snaps together in those first 2 games. I think that's obviously big too. But honestly, John, any opportunity to rebuild this run game, get it going again, and thereby being able to kind of establish the rest of your offense, I think it's going to be big. The Saints went from being the number 1 team in the first 2 weeks in playoff usage, over 40%, to the bottom team in the NFL, or excuse me, bottom 3rd team, I believe it is, in the NFL in play action usage since week 3 at like 17.1%. And a lot of that is because they haven't been able to get their run game going. You get that started, the rest of your offense works.
Yeah, I agree. And look, Eric McCoy, we got to see him in the locker room this week. So it's refreshing because that means he's starting to get back into the mix and all this other stuff. And again, I still think he's got a little bit of ways to go for sure. But, again, it's encouraging because, again, this is a 4-game slate, right? You got the Chargers this weekend, which is going to be a tough game. You got the Panthers right behind, the Falcons, and then the Browns. So you could hypothetically come out of this stretch at least 3-1. But again, the team has to show up. They have to execute. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is execution here. And I think when I look at the offensive line, we said so much that the Kubiak offense, I mean, go back to all of our past episodes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, shameless plug. But February, we were talking about when this was done, that the offensive line is going to dictate a lot for this. And of course, it's not just the offense. We're going to talk about the defense plenty here, but you have to put Spencer Rattler in situations to succeed. I mean, you can't go down 7. You can't have him have to be something that as a rookie that he shouldn't be. You know what I mean? And so Ruiz back there paired up with Trevor Penning, I think is going to go a long way. Or Lucas Patrick playing with Taliesin Fuanga. But I like Connor McGovern. I think he's going to be just fine, and filling in with Eric McCoy coming back here soon, hopefully. This is a chance for Alvin to get a lot more success. It's a chance for Taysom. It's a chance for Kendre Miller. I was really in the Broncos game why they didn't use Kendre Miller much. It was maybe he was on a pitch count, maybe it's something along that lines, but really bizarre that he got to play, but he really didn't get to play a lot. And when he did play, he was actually pretty successful. So I'm with you. I think the run game is the easiest way for this team to be able to do that. But the Chargers defense poses a real problem there too.
Yeah, top 10 defense against the run, and you're right on Kendre Miller. 6 rushes for 36 yards. That 6-yard per carry average is the best for any Saints running back this season. Even when Alvin Kamara was, scoring 4 rushing touchdowns against the Dallas Cowboys. I want to correct myself real quick. 6th lowest play action percentage since week 3, not 3rd lowest. But yeah, no, I think that's where it all kind of gets predicated. And then when you're able to get that run game going, creates a little bit more space, and the Chargers play to a pretty good advantage for the Saints. They play with a box disadvantage amongst the most in the NFL, actually at the lowest rate in the NFL, or at the highest rate in the NFL, excuse me, to where they have fewer defenders than there are blockers in pursuit, whether that's in pass rush or in the run game. So I think that helps you with Alvin Kamara, with Taysom Hill, with Kendre Miller, and getting that run game going. And they also play the second highest rate of off coverage in the NFL in the passing game. So 5+ yards of cushion. And that's big for Chris Olave, who's going to get a lot of clean releases off of the line of scrimmage. It'll also give Spencer Rattler the opportunity to be able to operate with timing because they don't play a lot of press man, play up against the play up at the line of scrimmage type plays. If you're the Chargers defense, it's like gives you the opportunity to maintain your timing on the offensive side. So I think both of those things translate well for New Orleans in the areas that they need to get going. So the opportunity will be there, but can the offense be opportunistic and take advantage of those chances?
Yeah, I think it's all about execution for sure. I mean, like that's just what they need to do. And from an offensive perspective, I'm glad you talked about the passing game because there's plenty to talk about there. But I mean, we'd obviously be remiss in not talking about Alvin Kamara getting the contract extensions.
Yeah.
It was hilarious last weekend to see the fictitious trade rumor come up that had zero truth to it, obviously. But even Kamara saying going out and addressing it. And look, I think from a long-term big picture perspective, it's really good to see somebody like Kamara who, I mean, again, if you ever want to get a pulse on where this team is really at, go talk to Alvin Kamara because he's going to always tell you like it is. Like he ain't going to sugarcoat anything. He's going to be totally transparent in where this team is. And it's like, even going back the other year when he said this team doesn't have an identity. Well, he was right. You know what I mean? Like you can say coach wise that they feel like they do, but they were lost in a lot of ways. But great move to get him a 2-year extension. Obviously they're not going to abandon him, which again, we've talked plenty about what the future of this team could hold. I think that means that, Kubiak is obviously going to get another shot here, and of course we're only several games in. I'm not saying that he would get fired for any reason, but it gives him a chance to continue to evolve this offense in a manner which is going to only mean successful things. But Kamara is in line to retire a Saint. He's also in line to become the team's all-time leading rusher. I thought the deal wasn't too bad either. Like it was actually kind of what I projected. I had said a 2-year, $25 million extension. The only thing I was a little bit off on was the guaranteed money. I was like more of the 68 to 70% range, but he got a lot more than that. But that's good to see, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you're giving all the guaranteed money. I think a lot of people look at the RB ahead of his name, and then they go $11 million guaranteed per year on average on a 2-year extension. That's way too much for running back, but it's not just a running back, right? He's the cultural center of your team. He's the guy that bridges the gap between this generation and what the next generation or the next era of this team will look like. I think that he's also your most consistent scorer, which I think is inarguable in terms of looking at where it is that the Saints sit over on the offensive side when they are finding the end zone. Typically, it's Alvin Kamara. Odds are that it's either Alvin Kamara or it's Rashid Shaheed, and Rashid Shaheed's done for the season. So it's Alvin Kamara. And so I think that that to me is really what you're getting in a deal like this. It's not just, people made all their to do about the Taysom Hill contract and why are you paying him that much? Well, he also leads the team in touchdowns over the course of the last 3 seasons going into 2024. I think Alvin Kamara has reclaimed that lead now, but those are the 2 guys that are that they're the ones that are paid. And those are the 2 guys that put points on the board. So that tends to be a pretty good set of decision-making by a franchise.
Yeah, and Taysom is 101. I mean, nobody does what he does. I mean, nobody plays special teams and runs the ball and fullback and tight end and all these other things, personal protector on punt teams. Like nobody does that. And look, it sucks when they get to injuries. And I think for some things, it's like, okay, now you maybe need to build a little bit better depth when you come to the next offseason and stuff like that. But again, they are 2 big parts of this franchise. I think Alvin's obviously we knew he wanted to be with New Orleans. Like that wasn't just fan service. Like he loves New Orleans. He loves how the city is. And again, as well as I do, when you love New Orleans loves you back. And that's just a prime example. And, people are like, well, nobody wants to come here and play and blah, blah, blah. But guys like Alvin, DeMario, other guys, Cam, Tyron, I mean, they prove it to you. I know not everybody's experience is great, but I think it's good to see Alvin kind of be rewarded. And then it's just rare to see a player be able to play all of their football with one particular team. So it's good for Alvin. Wide receiver, I'm glad you touched on Chris Olave because obviously losing Rashid Shaheed was a big problem. Obviously not problem, but disappointing. I mean, again, I like the concept of what he is, but another injury. They lost Paulson Adebo. Again, we'll talk about the defense probably after the break, but Marquez Valdez-Scantling comes into the play. In Cedric Wilson Jr., he's going to be out with a hip injury. So now it's a new guy that has a semblance of this offense when he was with Matt LaFleur and the Packers, but now you have him. You have obviously Bub Means, Mason Tipton. They're probably going to have to call up somebody from the practice squad, but your wide receiver room aside Olave is kind of, I don't want to say green, but there is promise there with the guys like Bub Means and such. But, for Rattler, is this more of a tight end involved game in the passing game and leaning on 12, or can he get some of these other guys involved like what we've seen somewhat in the past, but, I just don't know if he's had the opportunity to really cook here.
Right. Yeah. No, I do think we'll see a lot of 2 and now with Taysom Hill back 3 tight end sets, depending upon how you designate where he lines up and things like that. But I think you'll see a lot of 12 and 13, one running back, 2 tight ends, 1 running back, 3 tight ends type sets. But look, you still have to be able to produce in 2 wide receiver, 3 wide receiver sets as well, because you're going to use those. So even if you're seeing a lot of 2 and 3 tight end moments, a lot of 2 running back moments, things like that, you still are going to see a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. So you got to be able to produce there. So I think green is actually the right way to look at it, John, because I don't think green is necessarily like a negative thing. I think it's just like an inexperience as of right now with this system. So Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Quez.
According to the Saints press release, it's also Quez. So I'm gonna roll and see, and then try not to retrain my brain as much. Yeah. But Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and then he's brand new to the team, so he's green in terms of what the team's culture is, what they like to do, how they like to operate, all those other things. But means Mason Tipton, Jermaine Jackson, rookies, right? So I wouldn't be surprised to see Equanimeous St. Brown, again, another new addition to the team over the course of the offseason. Don't get me wrong, but still a new addition, new face for the season. So yeah, it is. It's a green, and there's potential with these players. And I think that's just kind of the truth. You look at where Marquez Valdez-Scantling ends up contributing. If you look at the 122 wide receivers that have been targeted at least 100 times since 2018 that are still active, he is the one with the largest target share, 20 plus yards downfield. Sound familiar? Because the guy that he's replacing was number 4 on that list in Rashid Shaheed. So he gives you a downfield element. And of course, you want Chris Olave to give you a bit more of that downfield element as well. But I do think that there is an opportunity here for Spencer Rattler to really finally be able to take advantage of the weapons that he has, because he should have a little bit more time thanks to his offensive line. And he's got his top guy in Chris Olave back, which will demand some of the defensive attention away from some of the other guys that are going to be running routes in the passing game as well.
Yeah, and I think this opens up some deep attacks. Like, I mean, we know Mason Tipton can stretch the field. We know that Jermaine Jackson could also stretch the field too. Like, they've got some speed there and guys that can get behind the defense. And so you're right. Protection is everything, right? And so again, I feel, we've seen the protection break down a lot. And in that Bucks game in the second half, like, they knew exactly what to do. And obviously Denver, I mean, they had this game, that game won within the first 10 minutes, you know what I'm saying? And so it's just hard to watch when the offensive line breaks down like that, and just knowing how much they've had to patch it and such. And so again, this team is hoping that now that they get the players back, that they can execute better, and hopefully it leads to points on the board and better things. And of course, I think it's going to be the more on the defense now is to kind of come back here, because they just have been pretty bad, here lately. And we'll have much more to talk about on the Saints defense when we come back from the break. Hey folks, John Hendricks here from Second and Saints. Look, we know it's the greatest time of the year again. Football's back, and it's here to stay until February. Look, over 1 million fans across 33 states got in a game last year by making picks on Underdog. Win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player's stats, whether it's touchdowns, passing yards, and much more. Who doesn't like apps? And Underdog has a real easy app to use. But if you're like me, I like to use a website too. So when I want to look at more stats for a game or look at splits for Alvin Kamara, this is a good site for us to go check all of that information out. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com, sign up with promo code SecondSaints, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Second Saints to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 or older, 19 and older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 and older in Colorado for some games, 21 and older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. I love Underdog because it's so easy to use and it's so fast to get started and play. Sign up process is really smooth and they have a slick mobile app. So what are you waiting for? Go check out Underdog today. Use that code Second Saints and we'll see you in the game.
People are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. The hiring process can be slow and overwhelming. Simplify hiring with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform. With over 350 million global monthly visitors according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. That's Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, back here on Second and Saints with our Saints versus Chargers game preview. Look, this defense just hasn't been able to defense in the past several games. With that, I mean, we could sugarcoat it. We could do all these things. What do they got to do? Sure. What do they have to do to win? Because they've just obviously have not been good.
Yeah, man, it's been a challenge. So obviously tackling is still something that you're looking for. Dennis Allen said that the team did improve tackling last week, 6 missed tackles. PFF has them charted with 7, so it might be 2 on the same play or something like that. Yeah. And so, they got better in terms of missed tackling. Just as a reminder, going back to Kansas City, Tampa, and going back to Atlanta, Kansas City, and Tampa, it was 10, 13, and 15 missed tackles in those games, respectively. So getting back down to 6 or 7 is still a good step in the right direction. So you want to keep that going here against Los Angeles Chargers. I think winning at the line of scrimmage is big as well, particularly when it comes to the run game. The Saints in their first 2 weeks, 0.3 yards before contact allowed to running backs on a per carry basis. Really good. Since week 3, 3.0, the exact opposite. So 3 yards before contact allowed. So that means 3 yards that running backs are picking up in the run game before anyone touches them in a New Orleans Saints uniform. So you got to get better at winning the line of scrimmage, not getting blown off the line of scrimmage as well. I think it was Nick who saw and tracked that this will be the first time the Saints will have their full defensive line and full second level of linebackers available for a game. That, of course, is with the exclusion still of Tano Passadio as well as Nephi Sewell, who Dennis Allen did say are working their way back. There's a very good chance that both of them are back at some point during the season. So I would say tackling, I think execution, run fill, particularly second level pursuit in the run game, and not getting blown off the line of scrimmage. Those are going to be the big things. And I'm sure that having a pass rush against Justin Herbert wouldn't hurt either.
Yeah, and look, Tano's closer than Nephi is, and in Nephi, I think it was about a month ago. Things weren't going so well, and as far as we had, but everything's been changed. Like he's actually getting closer too. So I do think that will help too. I think Tano would be a huge boost to this edge group, and so and you're right. Like the biggest thing is they got to finish plays. You know what I mean? So you keep seeing like the almost sacks or the, this guy is just able to get out of this and make something happen. I mean, we saw it with Bo Nix against the Broncos. We've seen it with every quarterback. And so again, it's easy for us to sit here and say, well, if they just make the tackle, then obviously it's a different outcome. But again, I think maybe it goes a little bit deeper than that and all that such and stuff. But Justin Herbert can run. He can do a lot of different things. And obviously with the Chargers, their run attack is obviously something that we know that can produce. I mean, they've done a lot of different things, but again, I think the trenches, it's funny because this game is about the trenches, like offensively and defensively. If you can control those two things, I feel like they have a great chance to win every single game. And of course, that's like football 101, but it hasn't been there for the Saints. And, now that they've got some semblance of full strength back, quote unquote, And that second line with Pete Werner and DeMario Davis, who is funny. Joe Woods called them Batman and Robin, which I thought was pretty interesting.
I love that.
But then even Willie Gay Jr. playing, like, I think that they can get what they need out there from those guys, and it's going to be on them to do the tackling. But now you're looking at the secondary a little bit different now because Paulson Ebo lost for the year. Tough injury, I mean, that's not one that you just sit there and say, oh, it's going to be okay. Like that's got some serious implications, and it's in a contract year. So obviously that hurts too. And we wish best for him. He's a solid dude, but now Alante goes on the outside. And then when they go in nickel, Alante is going to come inside and in the slot, and Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to go on the outside. So now what do you think about Alante in the outside role? And then what can we expect from Kool-Aid McKinstry?
Yeah, the biggest thing for Alante is just going to be getting used to the change in game of space, right? On the outside, you have the advantage of a sideline to play up against or use to your advantage. In the slot, you've got space all around you. And so you have to know where your safety help is, where your linebackers are. Like, you have to know a little bit more. But Alante, I think, is going to be ready for that. He did it well against Dallas. This is kind of the same thing that they did when Marshawn was out. Marshawn Lattimore was out week 2. So I would expect to see that. Alante Taylor was also named the most disruptive defender by 33rd team, which was a metric that I really liked. They counted up 16 plays in which he had either a sack, forced fumble, pass breakup, interception, or tackle for a loss. And those 16 plays led all defenders in the NFL, one of only 4 defensive backs, including the Detroit Lions, Brian Branch, which, like, if there was ever any defender I wish I could go out there and grab and put in a Saints uniform, it's probably Brian Branch. The kid's so good. And so, like, that's what you're getting from Alante, though, right? Like, you're getting that level of play from Alante Taylor. So I think that's going to be great. I think Kool-Aid fits in really well, coming off the press man system of Nick Saban's Crimson Tide defense, Crimson Tide defense, and everything. I think he's going to fit in well. I think he only allowed 1 catch up against the Dallas Cowboys. It was like a catch for 30 yards, but, he was targeted twice in that game, if I recall correctly, or at least on press man situations. And that's what he gave up, was 1 catch. So you'll take that from your rookie. There's going to be some rookie moments for him, but otherwise I think he's going to be pretty comfortable in this game.
Yeah, you open up that Brian Branch wound, and you know who they use on that second round pick.
Right.
And so, I mean,
yes, that's right.
That's all I've been seeing on social media and stuff. And so
I forgot about that.
Again, but yeah, I think you're right. Like, I think it's going to be interesting because, again, using Alante in a package where you can get him after Justin Herbert, I think you can see that. And honestly, if I'm Justin Herbert, I'm probably looking Kool-Aid McKinstry's way, which honestly, if the Saints know that, they can probably send some safety help over if they need to. I think Kool-Aid can handle himself really well here in this aspect. But when you look at the back end, that's a little bit more intriguing to me because they only have 3 safeties on the roster right now. It's JT Gray, Jordan Howden, who's going to be starting opposite of alongside Tyrann Mathieu. They, all intents and purposes, they just cut ties with Jonathan Abram. Like, he was on the practice squad, but, like, he's not there anymore. They no more locker room. Like, I don't know if they're even going to entertain him coming back, but now no Will Harris. They have Miller Bradford on the practice squad. I expect probably like Roderick Teamer to get called up. That's a pretty easy one. He's a vet. He can play some special teams. But are you a little bit concerned with the depth there at safety? And of course, Jordan Howden was a guy we don't talk a lot about, but I think he has the ability to play exceptionally well with Tyrann Mathieu back there.
Yeah, he's getting better and better every time that he's out there on the field. And they're able to do a lot more now with Tyrann Mathieu because of how well Jordan Howden plays far away from the line of scrimmage. They're developing Jordan Howden in the box and closer to the line of scrimmage. That's going to take some time. But you can always rotate Tyrann Mathieu down and play to the advantage of his aggression and everything, and him as a pass rusher alongside or opposite Alante Taylor in some cases, things like that. Like, that's a really good nickel set of blitzers if you want to do something like that, or dime set of blitzers on 3rd down if you want to go that route in the Okie fronts and things like that. But yeah, I'm concerned about the depth because anytime that you have one guy to fall back on in your active roster, there's going to be a challenge there. Now, Roderick Teamer spent all of training camp with the team, obviously a New Orleans native, Tulane grad and all that. They signed 2 Tulane grads back to their practice squad in the same day, him as well as Sincere Haynesworth. But so, yeah, I would expect Teamer to be the one that gets elevated. I wouldn't mind seeing Millard Bradford just to get a little bit of a look at him. We saw how much of a kind of ball hawking tendency he had during the mini camps. Didn't show up as much over the course of training camp and stuff like that, but was also dealing with injury during training camp. So I wouldn't mind getting a look at him, but I think you elevate the safety first, and especially the safety that, like, you put Roderick Teamer and JT Gray on the same punt coverage unit. I'll take that all day. Like, that's a really, really solid pair of guys to have on your punt coverage unit, on your kick coverage unit, special teams units, all that kind of stuff. So I think it'll be Teamer too. That will be elevated, but you're definitely concerned about the depth there just because of the waning number at the position. They also have Ugo Amadi on the practice squad, but he typically is used more as a slot corner in this defense. So we'll see what that ends up meaning for New Orleans. But yeah, there's some concern there. If either Tyrann Mathieu or Jordan Howden have to go away for a play, or JT Gray gets injured or something like that, like, these are the things that you're going to be a little bit more concerned about if those things start to happen.
Yeah, and look, I would expect when Will Harris is ready to return, he'll return. Like, it's just one of those things where I don't think it's something that's going to linger. I mean, he obviously has to be out for 4 games, but he should be back in the mix and such. But man, this defense, it's been a struggle bus. And look, I look at how they are constructed and what they have as an upside. Like, I feel like they just need a game to be able to build some confidence. And I think with this particular game, it doesn't have to be, and I wrote about this on Saints News, is the keys is you don't have to get like touchdowns on the first drive. You don't have to force a 3 and out, but just get off the field and then put together a field goal drive. Like, start there, then let's see what else you can build upon. Because I think with them, for a team that's lost 5 straight games, just get some things going right to help build your confidence and then start stacking on top of that. I think that's what they need, because too many of these games where they get down or things just don't go their way, or we see the defense give up a long drive and only for the offense to come out and do a 3 and out. And then the defense has to get put out there, or the defense makes a stop and then the offense does something and then the defense lets it go. Like, it's just, there is, again, I keep saying this, there's no harmony. There's nothing there for this team. And I think that's been what's hindering them a lot, is they cannot play complementary football. And again, you always want to do that, but they can't win without that. And I've said that, I don't know how many times on this pod, but they are just proving it every time that they lose.
Yeah. And they've never been, I guess Tampa, they were eventually out of the game, but typically until Tampa, they've been in the game. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, they're finding different ways to lose over on the defensive side. And I think that's the thing that's most concerning, right? You look at Philly and Atlanta, it was the inability to make late stops. Kansas City, 10-0 hole by the time that they got to the second quarter. Tampa Bay, 17-point hole, 17-0 by the time that they were still in the first quarter. Denver, 13-0 hole, even though Bo Nix couldn't complete a pass for his life. And that was in the second quarter. And then so I think you're looking at 2 losses that stemmed from the inability to be able to close out a game, 3 losses in a row that really come from the opposite of what we had seen from this team early on, which was fast starts, slow starts over the course of these last 3 games. So Saints have to try to find a way to strike that balance. I don't think you're going to get back to 40-point outputs on a consistent basis from this team. That's not realistic for any NFL team. Right. Yeah. And especially not against the Chargers, who are the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. I think they allowed just over 16 points per game so far. I think the Saints have what it takes to go to compete with them and do what they need to do. But the biggest thing is going to be, can they either keep it close early, and then if they're in position to seal a win late, can they close it out? Those are going to be 2 big things. That's where we've seen this defense struggle the most over the course of the early goings, the early going through the season, i.e. we're only through 7 games so far. But I think that's the big concern too, is like sort of the situational look at this: struggling early, struggling late. Both have led to losses.
Yeah, and I remember in that Kansas City game, I mean, even when the offense was able to put up a touchdown drive to be able to make it close, defense comes right back and gives them a touchdown. You know what I mean? Like, that's just
that was another one where it was both.
Yeah, it was just that swing. And so if they can figure it out, and I mean, they still have some time, but they got to do it like yesterday. And so
quick,
again, it's a big deal. And I don't know, how do you see this game playing out? Who wins and how does it work?
No idea, man. This is another one. This is another one where I'm perfectly happy saying I've got no idea. I don't have to be the big brained analyst here and give you some type of like, I think it's gonna end up this way, blah blah blah. I got no idea. Um,
Yeah.
you've
We
got a
picked the
team
Broncos
that
last week. We were real
right.
about everything. So
Yeah. This one I don't know. And the reason why I don't know is because you've got Los Angeles, who has done a good job of keeping points on the board, but has done a terrible job putting points on the board for themselves, right? They haven't scored a touchdown in the last 15 possessions. So since the second quarter 2 weeks ago. And then you have a team in the New Orleans Saints that are kind of this anomaly because they've struggled on both sides of the football here recently, but now they're getting healthier. So how much does that help them? And does that help them at all? We don't really know. And so there's just so much unknown. So it's a football game and one team will win. That's what I can give you.
the team that scores the most points.
The team that scores the most points.
That is the hard-hitting analysis. So, yeah. And then after this, Derek Carr, I thought it's interesting because this is the second straight week he's doubtful. He could be the team's emergency third quarterback. That's interesting, and I don't know if I expect it for tomorrow, but we'll see. But he should be in that conversation to return for the Panthers game, but we'll see how that kind of plays out. But look, for me, I feel like the Saints, with the mini bye, getting the things right, with the reset, with the health that they've come back, they're at least going to make this a competitive game. Now, I think they can win this. I think they can pull this out. I think they can start getting a win back in the column. I will take them. Again, I feel like this is more low scoring. I feel like it's like kind of you said is, depends on how you start and depends if you can close the game out. I think that they can go into the final quarter with a lead, but can the defense close it out? I think that's kind of where I feel like this is going to be. I'm going to say it's probably like a 23-21 type win. I don't think it's going to be a pretty win. I think it's going to be a close win, but they're going to do enough to get the win. And so I hope, because you go to 2-6 versus 3-5 is a big difference because you only have 10 games left. Even if you were to go 7-3, you're still finishing 9-8. And I don't know if 9-8 is going to be enough to get you into the playoffs. I think you have to go 8-2, but your margin of error and the impact of losing a game is going to hurt you even more. And you're starting to see like there's a good balance around the NFL right now. Like there's not many teams that I'd say are the clear cut, winner, at least in the NFC. AFC, obviously, Chiefs. NFC, maybe it's the Lions. I think the Lions are probably playing some of the best football right now. But I don't know. After that, it's kind of anybody's guess. But I think the Saints, they still have an opportunity, but they got to start winning games.
Yeah. This is a big one that you've got to be able to kind of figure out, because if you're 3-5, you're still alive, right? Like you have a real opportunity here. You got a trade deadline on the way too. And so, if you were to drop this game and then, I don't want to, and then it gets worse from there. Let me just say, there's no one piece that saves this team, right? Like this has got to be a collective effort that ends up kind of pushing this team back into its winning ways. And so this is the week that they've got to do it, because a loss this week and then a win against the Carolina Panthers is just not going to move the needle. And you got Jameis Winston coming back to New Orleans the week after that, if I recall correctly, if I've got my schedule right in my head. And then the bye week,
it's
and then
Atlanta,
you got the Rams.
then Cleveland. Yeah.
Oh, Atlanta. I forgot about Atlanta.
And then Cleveland. Yep.
And so everyone forgets about Atlanta. That's nothing new. And so I think that like any of those, like you're going to have, it's not going to be enough, to lose at Los Angeles and then come back and win against Carolina and say, look, we're back. No one's going to believe that. And so that's going to be, that's tough.
Yeah.
You can't,
you can beat up. Yeah, you can beat up on Carolina. Like you can do all those things. I think even if you win against the Chargers, it's not enough to be like, okay, this team's back, right? Like even if they win the next two, you don't sit here and say this team's back. Like I just don't buy that. Even if they can win the next two and then beat Atlanta, I'll be like, okay, they're at least trending in the right direction. But they still got to beat Cleveland, and then they go on the bye week. Then they have the Rams, and so it's just like one of those things where I don't think one good performance or even two good performances would even convince me to say this team is back. They're ready to play their brand of football, because there's still so much time left in the season, and they still are a team where, honestly, I don't think many people can trust them. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. And good call on that. Like, I don't think that you learn that this team is, back to being where it was in terms of its outlook week 1, week 2 with these next 2 games, but you still got to win these next 2 games because you need that momentum as you head into those games against Atlanta, Cleveland, so on and so forth. So they're important games, but they're not statement wins at all.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that kind of wraps up this preview. Ross, can you share what's going on Sunday? Yeah. Like I said, I'm excited for you, and I think people should be, because I don't know if anybody knows, but I want to give you a chance to do that, and then tell us what's coming up on Locked On and Locked On and LouisianaSports.net.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So the reason why I didn't make the trip to Los Angeles for this game is because I'll actually be hosting the New Orleans Saints pre and post game shows on NewOrleansSaints.com, their social media platforms, as well as on YouTube. So I'll be filling in for Aaron Summers, who will be doing some Pelicans, who will be doing Pelicans work, which Pelicans 2-0, right? There you go. Not too bad.
Except losing Dejounte Murray.
Thinks about Dejounte Murray, of course, but hey, 2-0. And so Aaron will be doing some Pelican stuff, so I'll be subbing in to host the pre and post game shows for the New Orleans Saints on their stuff. So I'm really excited about that. It's a cool opportunity, nice opportunity for me to get some, more live experience, some more studio experience, stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you, John, for reminding me, first of all, that I'm doing that. And then secondly, supporting me in terms of my inability to ever talk about myself. As for Locked On Saints, we'll have post-game coverage for you along as just like we will here at Second and Saints, and then over at LouisianaSports.net. On Saturday, I've got 5 things that you need to know coming out, as well as 3 big matchups to keep an eye out on when it comes to New Orleans Saints offense. And then, of course, we'll get elevations at some point later on that day as well. And then leading up throughout game day, just keeping you covered with everything going on throughout the game. What you got coming up, John?
Yeah, plenty. And I want to say, obviously, some people were hoping that we would do a live show out here in LA. And so that's the reason why we weren't able to.
Yes,
kind of
sorry.
do that. And which is no problem. Like, I mean, super happy for Ross, but it's something, an opportunity that came up. And look, I think it's fantastic that Ross gets to do this, and I'm super excited for him. So I'm maybe more excited for him than he is excited about it. But I don't know. I support my guy. You know what I'm saying? That's just kind of how I am. But yeah, no problem, man. Of course, anytime. And then, look, Saints News Network, we're rocking and rolling. I just put out some keys to the game on yesterday's piece. And then, of course, we're looking at more on this team. Like, can they do the things that they need to do? And I think that's the biggest thing right now. And of course, can they put it together? That's really the main things right now, the meat and potatoes of what the content is. Can they overcome themselves? I know I wrote something the other week after the loss about like going through opening statements and just trying to find, like, there's just the same things, like the product that's out there. Fans have a right to be upset. Like, I just think that's where it's at. So if you hadn't checked that out, I mean, it's still relevant, but I wasn't trying to be ugly or messy. It's just that, like, everybody has their right to be upset, and there's reasons why. But anyways, I digress. But anyways, so yes, of course, we will have the post-game show. We'll see how that looks. I don't know if we'll do it on the field and Ross back home or whatever. But we want to make sure we can figure that out. But we will at some point. And of course, make sure you follow Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints, all that fun, good stuff, and support LouisianaSports.net. LSU has a really big game against Texas A&M, and that'll be interesting to see how that works out and such.
Yeah, man.
And then here today in LA, I'm just going to try to maybe lay low because there's a lot going on here. There's like, I think 6 or 7 different events. And I'm like, I don't know if I won't even want to go outside. Like I do, like I'll probably catch the Dodgers game, but there's just so much going on, but at some point. But guys, appreciate your support as always. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe button, all that fun, good stuff. And look, we really appreciate all the support. I can't say that enough. And we will be back to talk Saints post game. And hopefully we're talking about a win, because I don't know how much more I can say about a loss.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, toes crossed. Get the gree off of this team and the Pelicans. We'll see. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. Have a good one.
Love you.
Prescription products require completion of an online medication consultation with an independent healthcare provider through the LifeMD platform and are only available if prescribed. Subscription required. Individual results may vary. Additional restrictions apply at lifemd.com. Read all warnings before using GLP-1s. Side effects may include a risk of thyroid C-cell tumors. Do not use GLP-1s if you or your family have a history of thyroid cancer.
If you've struggled for years to lose weight and have given up hope, did you know you can now access GLP-1 prescription medications through LifeMD? LifeMD is now offering eligible patients online access to GLP-1s, the breakthrough prescription prescription medication that can help you lose body fat and weight. Listen to what people are saying.
I've been able to live my normal lifestyle, and I've lost 20 pounds already. It changed my life.
I wasn't expecting it to shut off the food noise. This was life-altering, and if I can do it, I feel like anybody can do it.
And here's the best part. Your insurance may cover 100% of the cost of your medication. So go to TryLifeMD.com to have your eligibility checked right now. Get started today at TryLifeMD.com. That's TryLifeMD.com.